So if you look at the data, it's actually kind of shocking. You see these highly capable straight A high school students,
Right,
right?
oh, yeah, the ones who are just crushing it academically.
Exactly. They arrive at their first apartment or their college dorm, and they just immediately experience a complete systemic collapse.
Right, a total meltdown.
I mean, we are talking about young adults who can perform advanced calculus. They can code complex software.
Hmm.
They can debate historical policy with, like, incredible nuance.
But then reality hits.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The moment a load of white laundry accidentally mixes with a stray red sock, or they suddenly realize that groceries don't just magically manifest in the refrigerator, it sends them into a genuine panic attack.
It's wild to watch, and it's so common.
It really is. So today we are looking at a fascinating set of sources that argue we are completely failing at how we train humans for independence. And primarily, it's because we are training them for the wrong kind of independence entirely.
Yeah, the overarching theme in this material is really eye-opening. It suggests that we treat the milestone of moving out as the actual achievement itself.
Like crossing a finish line.
Right. Rather than realizing it should be the culmination of this massive hidden architecture of preparation. I mean, society often treats adulthood like skydiving.
Oh, I love that analogy. Explain that for the listener.
So you hit a certain age, say 18 or 21, and someone basically opens the door of the airplane, pushes you out, and yells, there you go, figure out the parachute on the way down.
Ready or not, you are in free fall. And the assumption is just that the panic of the fall will somehow teach you aerodynamics.
Which is a terrifying way to learn anything,
Right.
let alone how to sustain a human life on your own. It's incredibly inefficient. We are exploring a developmental landscape today where the most crucial work, the actual stitching together of that parachute, has to happen entirely on the ground.
Quietly, over the course of years.
Exactly, and in the absolute most mundane places imaginable.
Well, welcome to this deep dive. If you are listening to this and you've ever observed people who just seem effortlessly capable of managing their lives, while others are constantly drowning in unpaid bills and unwashed dishes, you are in the right place today.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is decoding a truly brilliant, grounded guide on how to raise genuinely self-reliant humans. And the wild part we're going to unpack is that it is all about establishing everyday, microscopic habits long before the child even realizes the value of what their parents are doing.
Yeah, and consider your own life for a moment as you listen. Whether you are currently raising kids, maybe planning to in the future, or you're just fascinated by the psychology of how capable adults are actually formed from scratch.
Because it doesn't just happen by magic.
No, not at all. The source material reveals that independence isn't some genetic trait. It isn't a sudden gift bestowed by a high school diploma.
Right, they don't hand it to you with a piece of paper.
Exactly. It is a slow, methodical transfer of physical and psychological skills. So we are going to examine the hidden mechanics of competence today.
And we should probably start with that definition that challenges everything we usually assume about being self-sufficient.
Yeah, let's start right there. Because the text hits us with a concept in the first few pages that forces a complete reframe of the end goal.
It really does. It states that independence is not simply the physical act of being alone in a space.
Right.
It is developing the power to not struggle when you are alone.
Not struggling. That specific distinction carries a massive psychological weight.
It totally changes the metric of success.
It does. I mean, we all know adults, perhaps we've even been these adults at certain points in our own lives, who live alone but exist in this constant state of low-level crisis.
Well, for sure. The apartment is a mess, the fridge is empty.
Right. Their physical environment is chaotic. Their financial landscape is just a terrifying mystery to them.
They just don't open the mail.
Exactly. And their nutrition is basically an afterthought dictated by whatever app can deliver food the fastest.
Yeah, they are physically independent, sure. They pay their own rent, technically.
But they completely lack the internal infrastructure to sustain that aloneness comfortably. They are surviving, not functioning.
They are out of the airplane, but the parachute is just tangled strings. They don't know how to pull the ripcord, so they're just bracing for impact every single day.
That's a perfect way to put it. The text strongly advocates for building the parachute on the ground, and it points to a very specific phenomenon to prove why this is necessary.
The first week, shock, right?
Yes, the author zeroes in on the very first week of living alone as the ultimate diagnostic test of a childhood environment.
It's the ultimate reality check.
It really is. Many kids realize on day one, literally within the first 24 hours, that cooking, laundry, and money management possess no inherent magic.
There's no invisible fairy refilling the toilet paper roll.
Right. Or ensuring clean socks just appear magically folded in a drawer. The psychological shock of this realization is profound for a lot of young adults.
It's like waking up from a dream and realizing you've been appointed the facility manager of a highly complex biological maintenance plant. And the plant is your own life.
That's hilarious, but it's so true.
You have to handle intake, waste, climate control, budget tracking. I mean, I remember my own first week.
Oh, me too.
The sheer exhaustion of realizing that every single meal required planning, purchasing, preparing, consuming, and then cleaning up. It was paralyzing at first.
Yeah, the source argues that a child's ease during this massive transition correlates directly, like one-to-one, with the small habits built in their early home environment.
It's not about how smart they are.
Exactly. It posits that the gap in capacity between a young adult who doesn't mind the daily grind of living and one who is completely debilitated by it isn't about intelligence at all.
So a straight-A student can totally fail this test.
Absolutely. It is entirely about accumulated somatic and cognitive experience.
Okay, let's unpack this idea of cognitive experience, because it raises a massive logistical question for anyone listening who manages a household.
Right. Where do you begin?
Yeah. If independence is a muscle that needs to be trained over a decade, what is the best gym to train it in?
The best training ground.
Right. If I'm a parent, where do I start building this infrastructure? Do I start with something safe, like making a bed or maybe sorting the mail?
You would think so, but the source says no.
It says you go straight into the most dangerous, chaotic, high-stakes room in the entire house, the kitchen.
The text is totally unapologetic about this too. The kitchen is the ultimate classroom for human competence.
But the author is also brutally realistic, which I really appreciate, because they acknowledge right away that bringing a 6-year-old or 10-year-old into the kitchen usually feels like an act of self-sabotage.
Oh, 100%. It's so stressful.
It paints this incredibly vivid, anxiety-inducing picture. A child's hands clumsily holding a sharp chef's knife, chopping vegetables at these weird angles,
Knocking over the measuring cups.
spilling flour all over the floor. I mean, it takes a parent maybe 15 minutes to throw a dinner together solo.
Right. But with a kid helping, it takes an hour and leaves a massive mess.
And that intense friction is where the vast majority of parents just tap out.
Understandably so. It is infinitely faster and more efficient to simply say, go watch television, go do your homework, I will handle the cooking.
The short-term incentive is entirely skewed toward parental intervention.
Exactly. However, the source urges us to fiercely resist that efficiency trap.
Because it's a trap.
It is. Those clumsy, agonizingly slow moments at the cutting board are the forge where fundamental life skills are quietly taking shape.
Okay, I want to push back on this a little bit, though, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener.
Sure, go for it.
Why cooking? Why not fold towels? Towels don't involve fire and knives.
Yeah.
Why take the risk with the kitchen if the goal is just building general responsibility?
That's a great question. What's fascinating here is that the text highlights specific, tangible benefits unique to cooking that you absolutely cannot absorb from a textbook or a YouTube tutorial.
Okay, like what?
We're talking about the development of physical memory, or somatic learning. Cooking forces a bypass of the brain's executive function and embeds knowledge directly into the nervous system.
Wait, elaborate on that. Bypassing executive function, how does that work?
Think about the neurological load of an 18-year-old trying to cook a meal for the very first time in their life.
Okay, yeah, that's a lot to juggle.
Right. They have to read the recipe, comprehend the measurements, monitor the heat of the stove, remember not to cross-contaminate the raw chicken with the vegetables.
And time everything so it all finishes at once.
Exactly. Their prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain handling working memory and complex planning, is absolutely redlining.
It is massive cognitive overload.
It's exhausting.
Their mental RAM is completely maxed out, just trying to boil pasta without burning the dorm down. No wonder they just order pizza.
Right. But contrast that with the child who stood in the kitchen since they were a toddler.
Ah, okay. I see where you're going.
The text insists that repeatedly using one's hands alongside a parent allows the body to absorb the rhythm of the work naturally.
It becomes muscle memory.
Yes. They learn the intuitive sense of heat control. Knowing a pan is too hot just by the sound of the sizzle or the smell of the oil.
You can't learn that from a TikTok video.
You really can't. They learn the delicate nuance of adjusting seasoning. You cannot read a book to understand how much salt constitutes a pinch
You have to physically feel the grains between your fingers.
and taste the result.
So by the time they move out, holding a knife safely isn't an intellectual puzzle they have to solve at 7 o'clock at night after a brutal day of college exams.
Right.
The body just knows how to hold the knife. The mental bandwidth required is close to zero.
The physical mechanics are automated. This makes cooking a soothing routine rather than a high-stakes stressor for them.
Their first week of independence looks entirely different.
Completely different because they aren't fighting their own environment. They are simply flowing through it.
Now, the source offers a very comforting, actionable takeaway for anyone feeling overwhelmed right now. If you're listening and thinking, I can't run a culinary boot camp every single night.
Right? You don't have to.
The author explicitly states you don't have to do this daily. Bringing a child into the kitchen just once a week, consistently over the course of several years, is more than enough to build that baseline manual dexterity.
The frequency matters way less than the consistency over time.
Just one day a week.
Yeah. And beyond the physical dexterity, that once-a-week practice builds something far more vital.
What's that?
Deep-seated self-confidence, the core belief that, I am capable of feeding myself.
Wow, yeah.
That confidence becomes the armor they wear into every other challenge in adulthood.
Okay, I track with the kitchen. Cooking is an active, dynamic event. There's sensory feedback, it smells good, and there's a highly motivating, tangible reward at the end. You get to eat a delicious meal.
Right, there's a clear payoff.
But let's look at the other side of the domestic coin. What about the incredibly boring, invisible, mundane maintenance of a house?
The chores.
The chores,
Ugh.
sweeping the floor, taking out the trash, scrubbing a toilet. These tasks offer zero immediate gratification.
None at all.
So how on earth do we get kids to engage with the drudgery of maintenance without it turning into a daily screaming battle of wills?
This is such a common struggle. The text introduces a profound psychological shift to solve this exact problem.
Okay, I'm taking notes.
It requires moving the household vocabulary away from the concept of helping out
And moving it to what?
to the concept of owning a role.
This is where I have to pause and inject a heavy dose of skepticism. Because as someone who vividly remembers being a 12-year-old, kids categorically despise chores.
Oh, absolutely.
It doesn't matter what you call them. If you tell a kid to take out the trash, they are going to drag their feet, complain, or strategically just forget to do it.
Of course they will.
Are we really suggesting that a simple vocabulary change, calling it a role instead of a chore, is going to stop the endless nagging?
The skepticism is completely warranted, but the text argues that our conventional approach to chores actually engineers the very resistance we hate.
Wait, really? How?
The crucial distinction lies in the framing of ownership. The source specifically warns parents against asking a child to help with a household task.
Why? What's wrong with asking for help? It sounds polite.
It does sound polite, but when you ask a child to help you fold the laundry or help you with the dishes, you are implicitly communicating a very specific power dynamic.
Oh, interesting.
You are telling them that the chore is still fundamentally your responsibility, and you are merely outsourcing a tiny, temporary piece of it to them as a favor.
Wow.
It positions the child as a guest in the house who is occasionally drafted as an assistant.
Oh, wow. I see exactly where this is going. If they're just helping me, they have no real ownership of the task. And if it's my responsibility, they feel perfectly justified in avoiding it. Because it's not actually their problem to begin with.
Right. The text states you must give the task to them as their specific designated role or charge.
So how does that sound in practice?
They aren't helping you fold the family's laundry. Laundry folding is their undisputed jurisdiction within the household ecosystem.
But again, to push back a little,
Yeah.
why does claiming jurisdiction over dirty socks matter to a kid? Why would they even care?
Because it taps into an innate, deeply rooted psychological need in human development.
Which is?
Children, and frankly humans in general, have a profound desire to feel necessary within their tribe or family unit.
To feel like they matter.
Yes, when a child has a role that is exclusively theirs, they begin to understand that their specific contribution keeps the household functioning.
They aren't just taking up space.
Exactly. They transition psychologically from being mere consumers of the family's resources to becoming active, load-bearing pillars of the family structure.
The house needs me to function. That is a radically different internal narrative than My mom's making me do free labor again.
It changes the entire paradigm from compliance to contribution. It builds a genuine sense of worth and utility.
And the source points out a massive, immediate, practical benefit for the parents who manage to implement this shift.
Oh, the time saved alone.
Right. When a role is predetermined and clearly assigned as a permanent charge, it completely eliminates the daily friction of negotiation.
Yes, the negotiation goes away.
If taking out the trash is the child's undisputed role, the parent doesn't have to expend energy asking them to help every Tuesday night. The decision fatigue disappears.
The daily battle of will they or won't they just evaporates. It creates a predictable rhythm in the house.
And the long-term implications of this, according to the text, are staggering. The slow accumulation of these small daily achievements builds this bedrock of internal security.
Because when they eventually move into their own apartment at 22, they aren't starting from scratch.
Right, they aren't free fall.
They already possess the internal blueprint for how to maintain a living space. They know on a cellular level that a functioning home requires active, daily maintenance.
Because they've been an essential gear in a maintenance machine for a decade, they know the trash doesn't walk itself to the curb.
The rhythm of maintenance is already a core part of their identity.
So we've covered the physical chores. You can see the trash filling up. You can see the dirty dishes piling in the sink.
The feedback loop is very visual and obvious.
Exactly. But what about the abstract responsibilities of adulthood? This is the section of the source material that absolutely blew my mind,
Oh, this part is brilliant.
because it addresses something so hard to teach the invisible mechanics of living. Things like utility bills, rent, overhead costs.
Right, the stuff you can't see.
You cannot touch an electricity bill in the same way you can grab a broom. So how do you teach a 10-year-old about inflation or cost of living?
The source gets incredibly creative here. It steps straight into the realm of behavioral economics.
It introduces a concept we can call gamifying financial reality.
The text calls it the rent game.
The rent game. And I have to admit, when I first read this, it sounded almost ruthless, like something out of a corporate training seminar for kids.
It sounds harsh at first, yeah.
But the psychology behind it is brilliant. Picture your own living room, if you're listening, and imagine running this system with your kid. Here is how the author breaks it down.
Walk us through it.
The parents provide the child with a set allowance. Let's use easy math and say it's $10 a week.
Okay, $10.
But, and here's the catch in, the parents require the child to pay back a specific portion of that allowance every single week for rent, electricity, and food.
It is essentially simulating the entire macroeconomic structure of adult life on a micro, child-friendly scale.
Exactly. So the kid gets the $10 bill, but immediately has to hand over $2 for their room's rent, $1 for the electricity powering their tablet, and $1 for the groceries.
So they are left with $6.
Right, $6 of truly disposable discretionary income.
To understand why this is so effective, we have to look at how children process abstract information versus tangible experience.
Okay, tell me more.
If you sit a 10-year-old down at the kitchen table and deliver a lecture on inflation, the fluctuating cost of utilities, and the importance of budgeting for overhead,
They tune you out in 5 seconds.
their eyes will glaze over immediately. The concepts are too ethereal. They mean nothing to them.
Right.
However, children are highly attuned to play. They accept complex rules and systems incredibly readily when they are framed as a game.
Wait, I want to connect this to behavioral economics for a second. Specifically, the concept of loss aversion.
Oh, that's a great connection.
By forcing the child to physically hold the $10 in their hands and then physically hand the $4 back, you are simulating the psychological pain of taxes and overhead before they ever see a real paycheck.
That physical sensation of parting with the money is critical. Taking the coins or bills in as gross income and then physically handing specific amounts back to cover specific expenses builds a visceral understanding of cash flow.
It hurts a little bit.
It does, and the source explicitly notes the importance of splitting the tax into categories.
Oh, like why not just charge a flat $4 fee?
Exactly.
Yeah.
By charging separately for electricity, rent, and food, the child learns that daily life drains resources in multiple distinct ways.
It breaks the illusion of a single amorphous living cost.
Right. They realize the lights cost money, the water costs money, the roof over their head costs money.
And watching that money leave your hand is a lesson you cannot teach with a spreadsheet or a lecture.
Not at all.
The text actually mentions that adults who played this exact game as children reported years later that it profoundly anchored them during their college years. They already understood the concept of overhead.
It fundamentally inoculates them against the dangerous illusion of gross income versus net income.
That's huge.
They learn early on that receiving a certain amount of money does not mean all of that money is yours to spend on whatever you want.
Which brings up the next logical step in the source's financial roadmap, saving.
Right, what do you do with the rest?
Because once the child has paid their rent and utilities, they have that $6 of net income. What do they do with it?
The author heavily advocates for the return of the classic physical piggy bank.
Not digital app.
No, not an app, not a bank account they can't see, a physical container.
It is another necessary physical manifestation of an abstract concept.
Exactly. The child needs to literally see the coins piling up, or pick up the jar and feel it getting heavier week by week.
The text emphasizes that this tactile experience teaches the profound power of delayed gratification.
Which is so hard to teach in a digital world.
It really is. It trains the brain to hold back on immediate low-level desires like buying a candy bar today in order to fund a larger goal, like a video game next month.
And it isn't just about teaching the strict discipline of waiting. It is about teaching the joy of the result.
The payoff.
Yeah. When a child finally cracks open that heavy piggy bank and purchases the item they have been staring at in the store for 6 weeks, the emotional and dopamine reward is massive.
They associate saving with triumphs, not deprivation.
Exactly.
Consider the alternative scenario, which the text highlights as a significant developmental danger. Sudden wealth syndrome in young adults.
Oh, this is a huge problem. The contrast is stark.
Paint that picture for us.
Think about a teenager who has never managed physical cash or paid mock rent. They go off to a university and suddenly they are handed a checking account, a massive student loan disbursement, and a credit card.
Oh boy.
The source warns that sudden access to unmanaged funds without any prior behavioral training almost universally leads to disastrous financial decisions.
I mean, they log into their banking app, see $2,000 from a loan disbursement, and their brain just registers $2,000 of fund money.
Right, because they've never paid overhead.
They haven't internalized the rent, electricity, and textbook deductions yet, so they buy a new laptop, they eat out every night, and they're completely broke by October.
The rent game acts as a vaccine against this exact financial shock. It exposes the child to a small, manageable dose of economic reality early on.
It builds up their immunity.
Exactly. By the time they face the real financial ecosystem at 18, their economic immune system, their discipline and understanding of cash flow is robust and tested.
So if we step back and look at the household we are building here, we have kids chopping vegetables, owning the laundry department, and paying rent out of their allowance.
A fully functioning mini society.
But setting up these macroeconomic simulators and role assignments brings up a massive logistical problem.
Enforcement.
Right. How on earth do you enforce this without turning into a dictator? If a parent just barks orders, the systems will collapse into resentment.
Completely.
This brings us to a crucial pivot in the material, the architecture of action, how we communicate rules, and more importantly, how we deliver praise.
Having the right systems in place is completely useless if the instructions for executing those systems are flawed or ambiguous.
Right.
The text provides a stark warning about the paralysis of ambiguity.
It points out that if a child doesn't know exactly how many plates they are supposed to wash,
Yeah.
or where exactly the clean clothes are supposed to be stored, they don't just do the chore poorly, they freeze.
Yes. The source literally says, if it's ambiguous, they will be bewildered.
Bewildered, that's a great word for it.
This taps deeply into the psychology of boundaries and cognitive mapping. For a child, the world is already an overwhelmingly complex, unpredictable place.
It's chaotic.
Very chaotic. So when we assign them a task, clear, broad rules act as a psychological safety net. If a parent says, go clean the kitchen, that command is terrifyingly vague.
Does clean mean sweep the floor, scrub the sink, wipe the inside of the microwave, reorganize the entire pantry?
The child looks at the kitchen, feels completely overwhelmed by the infinite possibilities of what clean might mean, and so they just do nothing.
Or they wipe one counter and quit, and then the parent gets mad.
Exactly. But if the parent says, your role is to wash the 5 plates we use for dinner, dry them, and place them in the left-hand cupboard, that is a highly executable command.
It provides a defined start and a defined finish line.
The anxiety of the unknown is totally removed.
However, the text offers a very nuanced warning here about overcorrection.
Right, the micromanaging side.
While clarity is essential, rules that are too fine, too granular, or too restrictive will cause the child to feel suffocated.
The micromanagement trap. This is huge.
Explain that trap.
If you dictate not just that they must wash the plates, but you stand over them and dictate exactly how they must hold the sponge, precisely how many drops of soap they are allowed to use,
Oh, that sounds miserable.
and the exact clockwise motion they must apply to the ceramic, you completely strip away their autonomy.
You turn them into a meat robot executing your program, rather than an active participant solving a problem.
Yes, the psychological goal is to find the Goldilocks zone of guidance.
Not too vague, not too strict.
Right. Broad strokes of clarity regarding the what and the where, while leaving the how somewhat flexible.
They need the space to figure out the most efficient way to hold the sponge themselves, through trial and error.
The text even suggests that families should establish these baseline rules collaboratively.
I love that idea.
Sitting down and asking the child, what do you think is the best way to handle the dinner dishes? Turns the rule-setting process itself into a profound exercise in logic and negotiation.
Okay, so let's say the rules are set collaboratively. The boundaries are clear. The child executes the task.
Now comes the feedback.
Now comes the critical moment, the feedback. And the source's advice here applies to so much more than just parenting. It is a masterclass in management for anyone listening.
It really is.
It dictates that you must praise the process and the effort, not just the final result.
In developmental psychology, this is the foundational difference between nurturing a growth mindset and a fixed mindset.
Think about this in the context of your own adult life. Let's use an employee review analogy.
Okay, let's hear it.
Imagine you are at work and you spend 50 agonizing hours grinding on a massive, complex project.
You're exhausted.
You run into unforeseen roadblocks, you have to pivot your strategy, you work late into the night, you finally hand it in, and your boss only looks at the final bottom line sales number.
Ouch.
They completely ignore the hustle, the late nights, the creative problem solving you had to deploy. If the final number isn't perfectly on target, they just look at you and say, not good enough.
It's devastating.
How quickly does your motivation evaporate?
It's instantaneous. You check out mentally right then and there. You probably start updating your resume that afternoon.
You completely disengage. The source argues it is the exact same psychological mechanism for a kid folding laundry.
Yes.
If a child spends 10 minutes wrestling with the spatial geometry of a fitted sheet, which, let's be honest, adults can't even fold fitted sheets.
I certainly can't.
Right. So they try their hardest to get the corners to align. And the parent walks in, looks at the lopsided result, and says, that looks messy. Unfold it and do it again.
The parent has just crushed their spirit.
Completely crushed. The parent evaluated the outcome and ignored the labor.
The text emphasizes that looking at the process, saying something like, I saw how hard you worked on figuring out those corners, that sheet was really fighting you, validates the child's reality.
It makes them feel seen.
It teaches them that their effort has inherent value, regardless of whether the final product is pristine.
Which naturally leads us to the flip side of praise. How do we handle the inevitable mistakes?
Because there will be mistakes.
Because if we're letting kids experiment with the how of a chore, they are going to mess up. The source focuses heavily on the parental reaction to failure.
An emotional, top-down, scolding reaction, yelling, expressing deep disappointment over a dropped glass or a ruined piece of clothing breeds a destructive complex.
What kind of complex?
It creates a deep-seated Pavlovian hatred toward domestic responsibilities. The child begins to associate the physical act of doing a chore with emotional pain and the terror of parental anger.
So their logical survival response is to avoid the task entirely or lie to cover up mistakes.
Exactly the opposite of independence. Instead, the text advises parents to adopt a radically collaborative stance.
What does that look like?
When something shatters or a mistake is made, the immediate knee-jerk response should never be, "Why did you do that?" Or, "Look what you did."
It should be what?
It should be, "Okay, how can we fix this together?"
How can we fix this together? That phrase is a tension diffuser.
It instantly shifts the dynamic from adversary to partner.
It signals to the child, you messed up, but you are not in danger and you are not alone.
It builds profound, resilient trust. And it teaches the mechanics of problem solving rather than the mechanics of shame.
And speaking of mistakes, this pivots perfectly into what I believe is the most counterintuitive, brilliant revelation in this entire deep dive.
The sandbox concept.
Yes. The source makes a fascinating argument that making a massive mess, failing spectacularly, is not an unfortunate byproduct of learning. It is the actual point of the exercise.
The home must become a safe sandbox of failure.
The concept of the home as a laboratory for mistakes is beautiful.
Oh.
It frames childhood not as a performance, but as a series of necessary experiments.
The source provides such vivid, relatable examples of these necessary disasters, too.
Give us one.
Like a child confidently taking charge of dinner, only to mess up the seasoning so badly that the food is practically inedible.
Oh, we've all been there.
Or the classic, universally understood laundry catastrophe.
No.
The child confidently throws a new red shirt in with the hot white laundry, causing a massive pink dye transfer and ruining the entire load of school uniforms.
Just a total disaster.
Yeah.
But to understand the immense, almost incalculable value of these early failures, we have to look at the timeline of human life and the escalating cost of mistakes.
Right.
Consider the laundry disaster at age 10, living under a parent's roof.
Right.
What is the actual tangible consequence?
The child wears slightly pink socks for a few months.
It is easily fixable, or at the very least easily survived. The stakes are incredibly low.
It becomes a funny story you tell at Thanksgiving. You know, remember the year everything we owned was pink?
Exactly. But take that exact same lack of knowledge and delay the failure.
Oh, this is the scary part.
Imagine a laundry disaster at age 22, the night before a crucial, career-defining job interview, when the young adult only owns one crisp white dress shirt.
That is no longer a funny story. That is a crisis.
That induces a panic attack.
The home, the source argues, is explicitly meant to be a safe, protected environment to learn how to recover from these errors while the blast radius is still small.
It's a sandbox. You can build a towering sandcastle, the foundation can give out, it collapses, and you are just sitting in the sand. You aren't getting crushed by falling bricks.
Right, you just brush the sand off.
The text explicitly states that experiencing these small, contained failures inside the home is the mandatory preparation needed so they don't repeat them when they're out in the world alone.
And even if they do face a failure later, they already possess the emotional tools to handle it.
Because they've practiced the feeling of failure before.
The practice of recovery is infinitely more important than the practice of perfection.
That is such a crucial point.
When parents sit down and review the ruined laundry with the child, not to assign blame, but to neutrally figure out the physical mechanics of what went wrong, like, the water was too hot and red dye bleeds, they build intellectual resilience.
The child learns the how-to of bouncing back.
Exactly.
Now, part of avoiding those catastrophic mistakes in the future involves developing a specific cognitive skill. And the text introduces a Japanese term for this, dandori.
Dandori. It roughly translates to the ability to arrange, plan, and prepare effectively.
It is the cultivation of sequential logic.
Yes.
Let's call it planning power. The source dives into the concept of building routines, specifically the morning prep before school and the night cleanup before bed.
These are major pain points for families.
Oh, massive. The text insists that kids must be forced to learn how to decide what to do first and what to do later. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly complex for a developing brain.
It really is.
For example, a child has to figure out, do I pack my heavy textbooks into my backpack before I brush my teeth or after? Do I lay out my clothes the night before, or do I scramble in the morning when I'm tired?
We are talking about the active cultivation of executive function. It is the neurological process of learning how to sequence a series of discrete tasks to achieve a larger goal efficiently.
Factoring in constraints like time and physical space.
Exactly.
But here is where the source highlights a critical trap. And I guarantee every single parent or busy adult listening to this will relate to this temptation.
The temptation to just do it for them.
Parents constantly, preemptively fix the schedule. If you think about your own mornings, it is infinitely faster for you to just pack their backpack yourself.
Probably faster.
It is faster for you to lay out their clothes. It takes an adult 2 minutes to organize a child's morning.
But if you leave it to the child,
You have to stand there and watch 20 minutes of agonizing distraction, poor sequencing, and dawdling.
the author is incredibly firm on this point, though. In the context of child development, efficiency is the enemy of education.
Say that again. Efficiency is the enemy of education.
Right. When parents preemptively smooth out the schedule, when they act as the child's external prefrontal cortex and arrange the sequence of tasks for them, they are actively robbing the child of the opportunity to think for themselves.
You're stealing their reps. It's the equivalent of taking your kid to the gym, lifting the dumbbells for them while they watch, and then wondering why their muscles aren't getting any bigger.
That's the perfect analogy. Letting them take their time, letting them execute tasks in a wildly inefficient order, And letting them face the minor natural consequence of being rushed or missing the bus is exactly what builds that vital dandori.
They have to feel the friction.
They have to physically feel the friction and stress of a bad plan to truly understand the value of a good plan.
The text notes that this planning power is exactly what they will rely on a decade later when they are trying to balance a demanding job, a social life, and household chores in their busy solo lives.
Right. If they haven't practiced sequencing tasks in the low-stakes environment of middle school mornings, they will simply freeze up when faced with adult scheduling conflicts.
Okay, I follow the logic perfectly. But let's bring this back to the visceral reality of a Tuesday evening.
The messy reality.
Right. Watching a child take 20 minutes to perform a task that should take 2 minutes. Watching them slowly, disastrously pour salt into a soup until it's ruined.
It's painful to watch.
Watching them confidently throw the red shirt in with the whites while you stand there biting your tongue. It requires the patience of an absolute saint.
It really does.
It requires a zen-like state that most exhausted parents simply do not possess after a long workday. So how are adults supposed to cope with the sheer inefficiency of this method? I would be pulling my hair out.
This brings us to the final and perhaps the most compassionate and necessary section of the source material.
What does the author suggest?
It requires a radical shift in the adult's mindset. We are talking about the absolute necessity of dropping perfectionism.
Reading this section was like taking a deep breath.
Was it?
Yeah, the text concludes with this profound piece of wisdom. Do not demand perfection. It explicitly gives parents permission to let the house be a bit sloppy.
It is a required release of control.
I think about the standard we often hold ourselves to, fueled by social media and societal expectations.
Oh, the curated houses on Instagram.
Exactly. If a parent demands a hotel-quality military corner bed making every single morning, or if they demand a totally spotless, sanitized kitchen the moment the kid finishes helping with dinner, both the parent and the child will end up utterly exhausted and deeply resentful.
It's just not sustainable.
The kid feels like they are running on a treadmill where they can never ever reach the finish line of approval, and the parent feels like an exhausted dictator policing their own home.
The source explores a beautiful, almost stoic philosophy here. It suggests that a parent must actively choose to accept the roughness, the inherent imperfection of a child's work.
Accept the roughness.
Yes. It means recognizing that a poorly folded towel or a slightly sloppy sweeping job is not a personal failure on the parent's part. It's a natural, necessary stage of human growth.
When a parent accepts that the floor might still have a crumb or two on it after the child sweeps, it softens the psychological atmosphere of the entire home.
The tension just evaporates. You aren't bracing for a fight over a crumb.
The text points out a physical reality, too. When parents let go of that rigid, unyielding standard of perfection, they physically relax their shoulders.
Their jaw unclenches.
And when a parent is physically relaxed, it naturally and inevitably leads to a gentler, more encouraging tone of voice.
The child feels that somatic relaxation. The home transforms from a high-stress place of performance into a low-stress place of practice.
And the author emphasizes that this is a shared journey. There's this great final reminder that there is no single, monolithic, correct way to teach these life skills.
Every kid's brain works differently.
Every household has a different rhythm. The parent is actually learning with the child. It's about trial, error, and adjusting your management style to the child's specific current stage of cognitive growth.
You are trying things out together.
It removes the crushing pressure from the parent to be the omniscient, flawless expert. You are allowed to figure it out as you go, just as they are.
Which makes the entire decade-long project of parenting so much more sustainable.
And the ultimate payoff for all this patience, the source summarizes its closing thought so powerfully.
It really puts it into perspective.
It reminds us that kids will move out. They will start living on their own much sooner than we think.
The day the airplane door opens is rushing toward us.
But the preparation for that jump isn't one grand dramatic gesture. It's not a masterclass lecture you deliver the week before they leave for college.
No, it's the quiet, almost invisible accumulation of these imperfect, mundane daily moments.
It is the thousands of lopsided towels, the burnt toast, the awkward knife cuts, and the rent game coins that ultimately weave the parachute that supports their lives years down the line.
It is the profound, compounding impact of the mundane.
So, to synthesize this entire journey for you listening today, true independence isn't about the isolation of being alone. It's about the deep capability to not struggle when you are alone.
Right.
And that capability is forged in the messy crucible of the kitchen. It's built through the visceral, tactile lessons of allowance games that simulate loss aversion.
It's built through clear but gentle boundaries that give a child a vital role rather than just a nagging chore.
And most importantly, it is built through the freedom to fail safely in the sandbox of their own home, supported by parents who have deliberately chosen the chaos of growth over the illusion of perfection.
It presents a fundamentally optimistic, empowering view of how humans actually learn to thrive in a complex world.
It really does. And I want to directly address you, our listener, right now. Thank you for bringing such a grounding, practical, and deeply insightful set of sources to the table today.
It's been a great discussion.
It is always a privilege to unpack material that has such direct, actionable relevance to how we shape the future, one tiny, imperfect daily habit at a time.
And before we wrap up, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. Extending the logic of this source material beyond childhood.
Let's hear it.
The text focuses heavily on how parents can create a safe sandbox for children to fail, experiment, and learn without demanding immediate perfection. But consider this for your own life right now.
As adults.
Yes.
Good.
As adults, we are often our own worst, most dictatorial parents. We demand instant perfection from ourselves when learning a new software skill at work, when navigating the awkward stages of a new relationship, or when trying to adopt a new health routine.
We really do. We don't give ourselves any grace.
Exactly. So what would happen if you applied this exact same sandbox methodology to yourself?
Oh, that's a great question.
What if you deliberately embraced your own messy process? Allowed yourself safe failures without self-scolding, and celebrated your own clumsy, imperfect attempts at the next big challenge you face.
Build your own parachute on the ground, and don't worry if the stitches are a little crooked at first. You'll still fly. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you on the next one.